do have some slight chance of rain later on in the day. High tomorrow going to get up to 87, 86 coming up on Wednesday as well as we make our way through the week. That's look at your traffic and weather on the early game. All right, 9 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Felchey from Gamecock Central, along with you. Terry Ford producing for us today, so we'll see how this goes. Not our typical forte, but with Bill taking one of his 300 vacation days for the year, we've had to shuffle some things around. So we're doing what we can, but hanging out here on this Monday. Plenty to talk about as we finally have a scrimmage in the books, as we are now but 19 days away from the season kickoff. It's so close. I can taste it. We're almost there.
I was going to ask, what's the countdown looking like? But I'm glad you brought it up. 19 days, man. That's crazy. And what is it from the Ireland game?
So that would be...
It's got to be less than 2 weeks, right?
So it'd be 12 days.
Oh,
because the funny thing is now we get to the point, because counting by sevens is easy, right? Because we're just so used to football. So you just take however many weeks it is. So Saturday was 3 weeks, and then subtract 2 days from it. That's 19 days until Carolina and Old Dominion, and then 7 days less is 12 days until week 0 with Florida State and Georgia Tech over there in Ireland. So we can say as of right now that next weekend, not this upcoming weekend, but the following weekend, there is college football.
Oh,
and
man.
Again, it's not a full slate of great college football.
But it's college
football. And you can watch Hawaii play somebody at 11 o'clock that night, and Tarleton State play somebody that afternoon. So football's football, and I will take it. I will happily watch Division III teams play each other just because it's football.
Literally, it's college football at the end of the day, and you're getting a potential college football playoff team playing in that game. Let's not sleep on Georgia Tech. They had they made a bowl game last year, did they not?
They did. They took Georgia to the limit
exactly
in the last game of the regular season. They Brent Key, which not to get on a Georgia Tech side here, they almost didn't hire him as the head coach because they wanted to bring in Willie Fritz after the Jeff Collins debacle from a couple years ago. But Brent Key got that team going because as soon as they fired Jeff Collins, Key got that team in gear, and they've been solid or trending in the right direction ever since. And the ACC very wide open this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how that week 1 game pans out, or week 0 game pans out, and what the conversation coming away from that's going to be.
And speaking of ACC and week 0, I think we forget. There's another decent team playing that day. That's SMU playing at Nevada.
The new member of the ACC.
Exactly. So I think that's an interesting matchup. And then obviously Hawaii at 11:59 p.m. against Delaware State. So
listen, I want to watch it.
Oh man,
because it's on.
Literally, we will be there.
We don't get Pac-12 after dark anymore.
No,
but Hawaii into the 3 a.m. hour of Sunday morning is still there for us.
Now, let me ask the question here, because obviously game times will still have to come out.
Sure.
I know they do approximate ones, but let's say USC, Southern Cal is playing Washington.
Yes.
Wherever it is. What time would that game be? Is that a 10 o'clock game, or is that an 8 o'clock game?
That's a good question. Because I don't know, based on the television contracts, if they have the slot for that with the Big Ten. Because they always had that with the Pac-12. We're always going to designate one game to kick off at 10:30 at night because they're on the West Coast. I don't know if the Big Ten has that same flexibility. And obviously their marquee games are on Fox with big noon kickoff. I'm trying to see here.
So I am looking at the schedule right now. There's a lot of TBD times. So Southern Cal has 2 11 o'clock games so far, and that's 11 o'clock p.m. So
that is good important distinction to make, by the way.
Utah State on the Big Ten Network.
Okay.
And then Rutgers on Fox at 11 p.m. So I think it really just depends. I don't know. I mean, I just wonder how many times, because, the game of the week is normally at noon.
Sure.
And I wonder how many times we'll see West Coast teams, especially if it's on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. How many times are they going to be playing at noon? Because that's 9 o'clock start time, and we've seen that a few times in the past. But
sure.
I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
If that's something that can consistently happen.
I'm looking at this here. I don't see any with Oregon, any noon games. They do play some late games, some 10 and 9 o'clock games.
Yeah. So that's more on par.
Yeah, a little more on par there. But I feel like for the most part, they'll try and avoid, them playing a noon game because that'd be a 9 a.m. local kick.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens, especially if it ends up being, like Oregon and Ohio State. That could be a noon game just because of the implications and how big of a game that is. But that'll certainly be something interesting to see. We'll get to plenty of college football conversation as the day goes along. But as I mentioned at the start of the show, we did have our first scrimmage of fall camp for South Carolina on Saturday. Not from the media, so we do have to just go off of what we hear coming away from that. But you guys also got to go out there and observe practice yesterday as well. Seemed like a lot of special team stuff, but coming away from the scrimmage, you at least went into yesterday's practice with an idea, I guess, of kind of where things were trending, right?
Yeah. So, so we weren't able to go to Saturday scrimmage. No one was. And it's understandable. So we heard from Beamer, and that was our main source of like, okay, this happened, that happened, and all this sort of stuff. And so you're kind of just taking his word of mouth. And he was pretty good about being open and honest about everything, which I can definitely respect, since, most coaches probably are wanting to keep things under wraps. And I totally get that. But with Beamer, he was pretty open about everything, like I said. And then you get into Sunday with open practice, and Rocket Sanders was back out there practicing. And I know a lot of people probably listened to some of that audio from Beamer and thought, "Oh man, he's done. He's out. It's the sky is falling. This and that." That's not the case. No. Beamer. I even asked Beamer at the very end. I think it was the last question. I was just asking about how the other running backs could potentially see more time with opportunities like this when Rocket isn't out there or whatever. And he confirmed Rocket's 100%. Yeah. And obviously he was back out there practicing.
And you don't. We know what Rocket is. Like he does not have to prove anything. He does not have to fight to be the number one guy. If he is healthy and 100%, he is your main running back. And when he's healthy and 100%, he is one of the best running backs in the entire country. A scrimmage is not going to tell you anything different.
Exactly. So I don't think it's a big deal. He was out there returning kickoffs and stuff and going through drills. So it's like he's at that point right now where he's doing all that stuff. It's just, why run the risk in a scrimmage this early? I mean, you'll get him reps in scrimmages eventually. Like South Carolina has another one on Saturday, so you can play him then and build him up. You don't want him going 110% right now and then him get hurt and it's like, oh, what are we doing?
Even for the week 1 game against Old Dominion, I would think we've talked about this. You're probably gonna have him pitch count. Yes. Like, all right, get him out there, let him get his feet wet, let him get him used to contact again, because he hasn't really done it a whole lot in the past couple of years, but save him for week 2, because that game against Kentucky, you're going to need him at his best. Like, you can beat Old Dominion without Rocket Sanders.
Exactly. So it was good seeing him back out there. And again, he was doing all the normal stuff. Other things that I kind of noticed, Nick Harbor had a very good day yesterday. He was out there returning kickoffs with those guys. I don't know why they have so many guys still out there returning kickoffs. I think at this point it's kind of like, hey, we should probably know who's returning kickoffs at this stage of the game. It's like 10 or 11 guys out there.
I mean, you brought in so many new guys that have the skill set to be able to do that. I don't fault them for running through it and trying it a lot of different ways, because it might be something that you change and adapt as the season goes along. Like, hey, maybe we try this guy first game, this guy for the second game, and kind of figure out what you really want to do with that. So I don't blame them for having so many, but it is kind of funny. They're like, all right, these 12 guys were returning punts and these 14 guys were returning kicks.
Yeah.
Wonder who's going to win this job.
It's crazy. So so Nick was out there returning kicks, and then he had a really nice catch. It was, so all 4 quarterbacks, Reno, Sellers, Ashford, and Bevel were all, together throwing passes to different guys, different directions. Nick made a nice leaping catch on one ball from Davis Bevel, and I was very impressed. I mean, it's a catch anyone should really make, but for him, it was a solid catch. Speaking of nice catches, Michael Smith, freshman tight end, had a very nice catch that I know is blowing up a little bit on social media. In South Carolina, I was doing some one-on-one drills in the end zone with receivers versus DBs, and some of the DBs made nice plays. I think Vakari Swain impressed a lot yesterday, but Michael Smith, I know, had a very nice catch yesterday.
And Smith is somebody that, again, got on campus later, joined the team with the summer, so was not here back in the spring. And, that clip that, was getting around social media, yesterday was probably one of the first times people have actually seen him. And he looks the part. Like, physically, he is big. And again, when you see the athleticism that he has as a tight end, it looks like somebody that could be really, really special. Now, again, this is camp. We're pumping the brakes because there's always that one guy that you hear about in camp, like, oh, this guy's going to be a superstar, and then you don't hear about him in the fall. And again, the tight end room, you've got Josh Simon, you've got Brady Hunt. Like, you've got two solid tight ends that you should be okay with. But I mean, could Smith work his way in there and play a little bit? Maybe, we'll see. But I'm not imploring anyone to put all their eggs in that basket necessarily just yet.
No, definitely don't put every egg you have in that basket of a freshman playing over Brady Hunt and Josh Simon, who have years of experience at this point. But Beamer also did say another tight end that I don't think we've ever really talked about is Maurice Brown. And he is a second-year walk-on tight end, and his numbers were pretty good in high school. I think he had, as a senior, 18 catches, and I think 11 of them were for touchdowns. So if any of that translates over, that's going to be great. And Beamer was saying that's a guy that no one talks about, but he's going to play this year a good bit.
Right.
And so I believe, I'll believe it when I see it, I think. But I think if anyone were to ever go down in this tight end room, it's like you have viable options to help out.
Yeah, and that's really the case for just about every position on this team now that unfortunately we didn't quite have a year ago. And again, my hat's off to Beamer and his staff for going out there and bulking up just about every room that certainly needed it this offseason, which makes not only fall camp, but these scrimmages that much more important because you are figuring out, okay, what's our rotation looks like? What does our depth chart look like? That kind of stuff. And again, like Debo Williams is going to be your starting linebackers. You know who your main guys up front of the defense are. You have a good idea at certain spots, but these other places, wide receiver, offensive line, the other cornerback spot, like you're trying to figure out who your guys are going to be there. And that's what hopefully, and again, we're not going to get a depth chart or anything like that today, but hopefully the scrimmage provided enough insight to where you start to see that separation between guys that were in the factor for a starting job and maybe guys that are only going to be backups.
Now, talking about the scrimmage a little bit, it did seem like the defense definitely had a better day, and that's kind of to be expected.
Sure.
Because the offense is still kind of working out the kinks of the playbook and stuff and figuring everything out. Again, not everyone was healthy. No Ja'Kai Moore, no Marquis Anderson, no Juju McDowell, other guys like that we just talked about.
Yep.
So the offense is still a work in progress. And the good news is they had a lot of positive drives, but they just didn't find the end zone. And it did seem like Matthew Fuller scored a touchdown. Michael Smith scored a touchdown. Other than that, it really didn't seem like there was a ton of scoring. At least that's what I got out of hearing from Beamer.
Right.
But again, some of those drives stalled out because of penalties and just things like that. So I think if you work those things out, if you correct them the best you can, limit the penalties as best you can, they'll be fine. The good news is they didn't have a ton of pre-snap penalties or turnovers. So I think those are big positives you can take away from it. Now it's just about, okay, how do we go about there and finish drives?
Well, too, on the conversation about the offense, focusing on the quarterback, see what Coach Beamer had to say about Lenore Sellers, not only his performance, but also his maturity as he enters year number 2 in the South Carolina program. Quickly want to remind you about the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. You can go online to our YouTube channel at the Game TV. Watch us all day long. You can also go to the App Store and download the 1075 The Game app and listen to us wherever you go. Beamer's thoughts on the quarterbacks coming away from the scrimmage. Coming up, it is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Monday here in the Game. You can play 3 coming back in.
Look good. He and Robbie got some work with the first group. Lenoris got some work with the second group. Davis Bevel got some work with that second group. So I thought Dow did a good job of rotating all those guys in there and getting them work. Thought Lenoris did a good job. They looked very poised and composed out there, made some nice throws, had some nice runs, managed the offense the right way. Robbie Ashford flashed. Davis made some good throws. So I thought overall, I think Lenoris has had, a good end of the week. Not that the first of the week was bad, but the last couple of days I've really been impressed with him and like the way that whole group is coming together in that quarterback room right now.
Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Velcher from Gamecock Central with you on this Monday. That was Coach Beamer Saturday after the scrimmage, talking about quarterback performances, specifically talking about Lenoris Sellers as we continue to pretend like this is still a quarterback competition, even though we know that it isn't. But in Beamer's, way of making things with this program, everything's got to be a competition. So we still have not officially named Lenoris Sellers the starter, but as you heard right there, nothing that he did on Saturday sways you from thinking he won't be the guy when Old Dominion rolls around here in 19 days.
Yeah, he's going to be the starter. I mean, it's a nice little story and all that. They still believe that this is a whole battle, but it's not. Like, no disrespect to Robbie Ashford or Davis Bevel, but those guys aren't Lenoris Sellers. Like, I get it. They've been around college football for a bit, but they've also been journeymen.
Right.
Like, it is what it is, and Sellers is your future. This is the guy that you put a lot of stock into. You better use him. Like it's like saying, yeah, we're gonna bring in Rocket Sanders, but we're not gonna use him at all. Like
right.
you have to roll with it. And look, if something happens to Sellers this year, like if he gets hurt, if he doesn't play well, maybe you can pivot then. Maybe you bring in Robbie Ashford to come play a little bit and see what happens. But for the immediate future, it's Sellers' time, man.
Yeah, he's going to have to do something egregious to lose the job.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's throwing picks and fumbling and all that kind of stuff left and right, then sure, you got to make a change at that point in time. But unless it gets to that, I don't think anybody else is going to be taking serious snaps under center except for Lenoris Sellers. And he's somebody that, we've talked about so much, I think benefited a lot from getting the opportunity to sit behind a now pro in Spencer Rattler last year, learn the ropes, get up to speed with the SEC and college football and all that kind of stuff, to where when he comes in now as a redshirt freshman, he is so much farther ahead than where he would have been if he was just a true freshman coming in or something like that.
And I think it's super valuable to have the year he did last year. Like he had 4 passes and threw for 2 touchdowns. And I know it all came in garbage time. But again, he was impressive when he was out there. But the big thing for him was definitely taking a lot of time to learn the ropes, learn the offense, learn how things work. And I think that year was super, super valuable for him.
Let's get one more cut here from Beamer, reference to talking about Lenoris Sellers. This is going to be cut number 12, talking about the maturity that he has going into his second year in this program.
Yeah, he's consistent. I mean, that's just who he is. He's the same guy now that he was last year, maybe as a true freshman at this time, and that's a great thing. He's steady, he's consistent, but he's just nothing phases him. He was just out there before I walked in eating lunch and kind of going back and forth with one of the linebackers about something that happened in practice. And today in practice, he had a ball that got batted down on a throw, and TJ Sanders and some of the defensive linemen were on the sideline kind of giving him crap about it. And Lenoris was getting the play call from Dow in his ear, but he was able to listen to the play call and then turn around and tell TJ to be quiet as well. So that's something probably that he wouldn't have done last year, and it kind of took me by surprise, like, man, Lenoris. But just stuff like that. He's having fun out there. He's got the respect of his teammates, and Lenoris to me is the same guy. I think around him, the way his teammates view him, he has their respect, and they think a lot of him as a teammate and a player.
And again, we've only got such a small sample size of him actually playing in college to be able to go off of. But everything that we've seen and heard about him this offseason, including something like that where he's multitasking to the point of taking in a play call while also, offering a rebuttal to, TJ Sanders on the defensive side of the ball. Like, I think that just kind of speaks to how smart this kid is, and hopefully that's going to translate over into a great season at quarterback.
Definitely. Like, it's very good that you have a guy that is as poised as him at his age. Like, we forget he's now going into his second year and redshirting. And, again, he did not play much at all last year. So this is going to be his real first opportunity to show what he's got for an entire season. And I do expect there to be ups and downs. That's how it's going to go probably. But I think having these moments early on, even in fall camp where your teammates are jarring at you and they're smack talking, and you're able to go out there and respond accordingly without getting into a fight or anything or a heated argument, I think it's very productive, and it just shows again that level of maturity that he does have.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we have to actually see it in game. And Old Dominion is the perfect week one opponent to knock the cobwebs off, give you the opportunity to start your first game, and hopefully put up some stats that instill some confidence. And again, when you go out there and play well, you're not concerned about the quality of the opponent. You're just concerned, hey, I went out there and did my job. And I think that is the perfect opportunity to give you that confidence boost going into your first ever road game in week 2 against a very formidable opponent in Kentucky that is very even with South Carolina in a lot of ways, and a game that is, as we've talked about so much this offseason, so vitally important to at least getting yourself to those 6 wins. Like, you need all the confidence you can going into that game, and hopefully that stems from a solid week 1 performance against Old Dominion.
I mean, we've talked about before, man, if they win that Kentucky game, there's a real possibility that they are going through September either 3-1 or 4-0.
Right.
And that's crazy to think about. But there is the other side of it where if they lose that Kentucky game, it's like they could easily be 2-2 or 1-3. There really is no in between, and that Kentucky game is going to be huge. Sellers' first road test, and I think, like you said, that Old Dominion game, knock the cobwebs off, get the rust off, learn everything you can about starting in that first game as best you can, and then go from there. Because Kentucky, it's going to be a wild environment, I'm sure. But I do think it's something that, based on everything we've seen and heard, he can definitely handle it. But again, once the real games start, that'll be when we have the true indication with our own eyes of what that could look like.
We're certainly excited to see it all take place this season, and hopefully a great redshirt freshman season for the North Sellers at quarterback. Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway 2.0 is back. Go online to 1075thegame.com. Register for your chance to win tickets to every home football game, every home baseball game, every home men and women's basketball game for South Carolina this upcoming sports calendar year. Just like last year, we're going to take our 3 finalists. We're going to bring you out to our golf event at Charwood here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to crown 1 overall winner there, again, just like we did last year. So again, the Ultimate Season Ticket 2.0 on 1075thegame.com. We'll switch gears coming up. Talk a little basketball as the men and women claim gold this past weekend out in France as the Olympics wrapped up. It's coming up. It is The Extra Point. He's Jack Felch from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head on your Monday morning on The Game. Tyler Head here to tell you about Twin Peaks. School's starting back all around the Midlands, and if you're feeling misbehaved, you can stay back after class and enjoy epic drink specials all week long at the Back to School Costume Party right down the road from us here in the Vista at Twin Peaks. The Back to School Costume Party starts this week. You can come celebrate the end of your kids' summer break with schoolgirls at your local lodge. Also coming up later on this week on August 16th, National Rum Day. You can celebrate Rum Day with sweet deals on your favorite handcrafted rum cocktails. Get Twin Peaks for $6 mojitos, $7 Kraken Perfect Storms, or a Cuban Old Fashioned for just $11 all day long. Again, all this, TVs as far as the eye can see, amazing drinks, amazing food selection, and the famous Twin Peak girls, all with our friends at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry along with you here on your Monday on the Game. That was the call on Saturday afternoon. U.S. men's Olympic basketball team taking the gold over France 98-87 on the back of a lot of Steph Curry three-pointers, including that one there that ended up sealing the game late there in the fourth quarter. And there's a lot to unpack from this game and from the whole Olympics. But what Steph Curry did in the last two games between Serbia and France really put the team on his back. In those situations, best shooter in the entire world, and he showed you why once again on Saturday.
He does not ever cease to amaze. He is insane at this stage of his career, and he only gets better. That's the crazy part. And speaking of Curry and all these guys, I mean, this is probably like the one time we're going to see him in the Olympics, and then this is probably the final run for LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, guys like that. That's a really good trio that's probably playing their last Olympics.
And I think that's what made this feel so special because, again, and I know this was Curry's first Olympics, but LeBron, KD, they've been around for a long time. 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, it's just the norm. Hey, these guys going to be on the Olympic team. It is what it is. But yeah, this past cycle, as you kind of looked at the age of all of these guys, you knew for a fact, LeBron's probably not playing in 2028. Neither's KD. Curry's probably not either. So I think it made it very sentimental. And I think a lot of people took the opportunity to appreciate this run a little bit more, knowing this was going to be the last time. And that being said, the future looks great. Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, you got a lot of young talent that's going to carry Devin Booker, that's going to carry the U.S. for years and years to come, and they should still be able to compete for gold medals and all that kind of stuff. But the star power that you're losing can't be understated with those three guys. And again, I think that made this whole run that much more special for a lot of people, understanding, because a lot of times you don't know always when you're going to see your heroes at their best for the last time. And at least in this stage, we knew for a fact this was probably going to be the last time we saw those three guys together on an Olympic team.
Yeah, and Curry specifically, just unbelievable the last two games, like you said. 36 points against Serbia, and Steve Kerr did say one of the greatest basketball games I've ever been a part of, which is definitely, accurate. And then, against France in the clincher, makes 8 threes, 24 points, and does, the night celebration there. It's remarkable what he was able to do leading this team.
Here are some stat splits for Steph Curry. Of the 6 games in France, the first 4 games, a total of 29 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists, 5 of 20 from 3. In the last 2 games of Serbia and France, 60 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 17 of 26 from 3.
That is insane. Again, just... He is the guy that definitely, without him, I don't know where this team is right now, but I think they'd still win, but it would be a lot tougher. But, I mean, it's remarkable what he did turning it on in the latter half of this run. But, again, I mean, it was a very good team effort. I think Devin Booker had a good game. LeBron obviously did as well. And, I think the depth this team had was truly remarkable. Having Anthony Davis come off the bench, Anthony Edwards coming off the bench, Bam Adebayo, Drew Holiday, and the list goes on and on.
Yep.
The future of this brand is in great hands moving forward, and it won't be the same as LeBron, KD, Steph, guys like that, older vets. I mean, nothing can replace what those guys were. But then again, you can't replace what the dream team was back in the day, and the 08 team.
And that's the funny thing about this. We have such a hard time looking into the future and saying, oh, there's no way that this next group of guys could be as good or better than what we currently have, but we don't know that for sure. And again, like you said, when the people were looking at the dream team in the early 90s, there's no way there could be another unit as good or as polarizing, as popular as these guys. And lo and behold, we've had that with a mixed guys. Carmelo Anthony obviously wasn't on this team, but in years past, how decorated of an Olympian he was. And guys like that, LeBron and all them, D-Wade, Kobe back in the day and all that, or that next great generation of great men's basketball players for the U.S. in the Olympics. And again, we're seeing the budding of some of those guys right now. They're going to take this for the next however many Olympics to come. And obviously the next one's in L.A. in 2028. So it's certainly in good hands. But you see the competition level around the world is getting very competitive. And you got NBA guys spread out throughout the entire world. Gobert was obviously on the French team, as was Victor Wembanyama. You beat Jokic with the Serbia team a couple times. Like, there's a lot of high caliber talent spread across the world now, to where it's not a cakewalk where you're just gonna come in. All right, U.S. can win the gold medal, foregone conclusion. No, they had to fight tooth and nail to win that one yesterday.
And I'm pretty sure they got like
Saturday.
I'm pretty sure France is like 5 or 6 guys on their team that have are solid NBA players right now. Like again, like you said, the competition continues to only grow, and it's like most of these teams have at least 1 or 2 really solid NBA players that can come in and just make an impact. So, but again, it doesn't compare to the U.S., and I'm very interested to see 2028. LA, how many more guys? I mean, this team, with all the guys they have, is very stacked right now, but there's going to be some open roster spots for that year. I wonder how many more guys are going to be like, yeah, I want to play because it's in our home country. Like, let's get this job done, win for the U.S.
Did you see that Draymond Green was in attendance on Saturday?
No, I didn't. He was
in the crowd. Supposedly, now I saw somebody tweet about this, and I went back and skimmed through the game to see if I could find it. Somebody mentioned on the broadcast that he was there specifically to watch Rudy Gobert lose.
That wouldn't be out of the realm.
Here's the thing. Draymond Green is petty enough.
He is such a troll.
I believe he would take a 10-hour flight to France just to heckle Rudy Gobert and watch him lose. Because remember, he had him in a headlock last year. Like, does not like the guy at all. So knowing that he has the opportunity to root against him in a game like that, I 100% believe he would do that.
Yeah, he's not going all the way to France just to watch Steph Curry and Steve Kerr, his head coach and longtime teammate. He's there to watch Rudy Gobert. It's the way you think about it, and with his history,
right?
Long history as a basketball player. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Are you familiar with the Chappelle Show from back in the day?
Not really.
You know who Dave Chappelle is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Very funny guy.
There was a segment, you can find it on YouTube, called Hater of the Year.
Yeah.
I think Draymond Green might just win Hater of the Year if that is indeed the sole reason. Like, yeah, you can say, oh, he went over there to cheer on his fellow NBA players and buddies, but I think he really went to hate on Rudy Gobert.
Oh yeah, obviously at the forefront it's Steph and Kerr and supporting those guys, but in the back of his mind he's probably like, you know what, Rudy Gobert just lost the gold medal.
I get to watch my friends win and that guy lose. Yeah. This is perfect. I also want to give a shout out. You heard the call there, Golden Dagger. Like, Noah Eagle is so darn good.
Underrated.
He is 27 years old. He is younger than I am. I'm like,
what are we doing with
this
our
guy?
Life right now?
Is, I mean, we're going to be hearing his voice for the next 40 years, at least, probably across all sports, because he's so good at everything. He's done football, does basketball, and obviously, yes, he's in the position he is because his dad is a great broadcaster and Iron Eagle, but he is a chip off the block. Like, it's one of those things where, like, nepotism isn't always a bad thing because he's killing it.
At least he could probably admit to it. Like, it's not like, okay, yeah, you're a nepo baby, but like, who cares?
But
if you're good at what you do,
exactly,
it shouldn't matter.
Like, Jack Collinsworth's a different story.
Yes.
Like, he got his job at NBC because of his dad, and he's not that great at it. But Noah Eagle, incredible.
Exactly. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, it's gonna be the same thing with Bronny James. Like, if he ever turns out to be like an all-star at any point, I mean, big time nepo baby. But at the same time, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, it's.
I was gonna say, you think the Lakers draft him if his name's Bronny Smith?
No.
Nobody drafts him if his name's Bronny Smith.
No. I would take, speaking of USA basketball and stuff, I would just take Asia Wilson over him any day. Any women's basketball player from that USA team. I pick him over Bronny any day.
I don't hate the idea. I'll be completely honest with you. Speaking of the women who were in action yesterday to wrap up the Olympics, we'll get into them coming up next. Real quick, though, I want to remind you, our Summer Golf Classic coming up at Charwood next week, the end of next week on August 23rd. Be out there raffling off season football tickets as well as giving away our Ultimate Gamecock season ticket grand prize. If you want to take part for your foursome, give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000. Register. Again, Charwood Golf Club at 803-755-2000. Register for our 107.5 The Game Summer Golf Classic. We'll come back, wrap up hour number one, talk some women's gold medal basketball. Next here on The Game.
Copper has been Kalia gold today. No timeouts here. Johannes up ahead. It's Williams. That was a two. Banked it in. A two ball. And the United States is going to claim gold for the 8th consecutive Olympics. What a finish. Williams with her foot on the line.
Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head, Jack Beltry, along with you on this Monday, wrapping up hour number 1. That was the call yesterday out there in France, wrapping up the Olympics as the women's U.S. team gets yet another gold medal, 61 victories in a row, this time defeating France in a nail-biter of a game, one that was really in France's favor for a lot of it. The U.S. ended up storming back in the fourth quarter there, and thankfully for them, as Noah Eagle mentioned there, about a foot in front of the three-point line, or else we've been going to overtime, and who knows what would have happened.
Yeah, that was a crazy game yesterday. Just very, nail biter type game, but that's kind of what you want with a trip or a chance to win a gold medal on the line. And again, this U.S. team, very much like the men's, stacked, and it's impressive, and it's very good. And it's very coincidental that the U.S. beats France again. So, very good overall. Asia Wilson, obviously, former Gamecock, the standout, takes home MVP honors from this event. And, I mean, what else can you say? I mean, 21 points, 6 of 14 from the floor, 33 minutes, most minutes on the floor. And, just very, very impressive. And again, one of the GOATs of women's basketball, hands down.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And obviously, local tie here, being from Hopkins, playing for South Carolina, and very cool to see her continuing to dominate. I mean, we know what she does in the WNBA, but seeing it on a national stage against the high caliber talent from all over the world is, even more special. And obviously, it just continues to, ring true the accolades that you have here with the women's basketball program that Dawn Staley has, that you can add another gold medal to that count with, what Asia Wilson was able to do, and really cool to see. But again, this was a game that was not, and this stat blew my mind. I think this is only the second time in that 61-game winning streak that games have been decided by single digits. Like, that's insane.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. The fact that they won by a point.
I know. And France did what the U.S. has been doing to pretty much everyone else, playing physical defense and shooting better from the outside. I mean, they, again, had their number for most of the game, and the U.S. only made 2 shots from the outside, both those from Kelsey Plum, yesterday, while France was a little more consistent, 17 of 36, and again, just played a very physical style of defense that nobody had really gone toe-to-toe with the U.S. like.
And that's how you have to play against a team like this to try and win. You have to be able to play physical, and you also have to outshoot from beyond the arc. But again, the U.S. is good enough to where it's like, even if that's the case, they can still find a way to get the extra shot and win. And obviously they did. It was very impressive to see. And I don't know if you saw after the game, and look, a lot of people are going to feel one way or another about her. But Brittany Griner, I mean, look, she's been through a lot, and It is what it is, but at the same time, it's like, she, when the Star Spangled Banner was playing yesterday, she was in tears.
Yeah.
And, had her hand on her heart and all that. And I know she'd been someone who was kneeling in the past, but I think it's kind of cool to see her go from that and then everything she went through with Russia, and comes back to the U.S., and she gets the opportunity to win a gold medal. And I mean, now she's standing for the national anthem, hand on her heart, in tears. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, very cool all around, and obviously everybody very emotional about it. And I saw, Kobe Bryant's wife, his kids were there. Because Anescu has the connection to them and all that, and she went over there after the game, and just very cool to see the men that had won on Saturday. LeBron, a couple of them were hanging out on the court side there to congratulate them. So really cool vibes, just all around, and again continues to add to this dynasty that has been women's Olympic basketball in the U.S. that we hope is going to continue.
It'll continue.
But I think, as you saw this year, the competition level is closing in.
Yeah.
Because for years, like I said, it was dominance where the U.S., there's no doubt, U.S. was going to come in, they were going to run you over and win the gold medal. Now, again, if they go into overtime yesterday, I don't know what happens. France could have walked away with the gold medal if, again, Williams is a foot back behind the three-point line and sends this game into extra time there. But you definitely look ahead to 2028 as perhaps the stiffest competition ever, because just like on the men's side, you have WNBA talent spread all around the world.
Exactly.
That makes this more even playing field.
Yeah, and I think the women in other countries are definitely closer to the men, or I'm sorry, the U.S. women in terms of getting that gold medal. But because it's in L.A. and stuff, and I feel like a lot of U.S. Players are going to want to play, I just think for right now, until proven otherwise, I think the gold medals are definitely in their favor for both sides of the sport.
No, for sure. Somebody's definitely going to have to go out there and do it. But yesterday there were points in time, especially going to the fourth quarter, you were doubting, are they actually going to be able to win this game? Is the winning streak going to come to an end? So it does make you a little apprehensive, like, man, it's not going to be a cakewalk once LA comes around in 2028. But, you know, I was kind of looking at, because again, like Diana Taurasi, like, I doubt that she's going to be on that team because she didn't even play on, you know, the championship game yesterday. So you're going to get the opportunity. You're going to have Leah Boston, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, all these women that are going to be having the opportunity to be on that team if they continue to have the careers they're currently having in the WNBA, where kind of similar to the men, it's like you're getting this new crop of talent that is coming in, and maybe you don't have as much of the old guard phasing out as you do on the men's side of things, but you do have a lot of reason to be excited about the young talent the women are going to be bringing to LA in 2028 as well.
Yeah, and it might take some time to get to that point of success, right? Mm-hmm. There might be some bumps and bruises along the way, but I think because it's in LA, home country and stuff, you don't have to travel far. They can make the adjustment quick, and I think the young guard, the new talent coming in, like those three, that's the face of the WNBA for the next 15 years or whatever, and it's going to be very fun to watch, and I'm excited for the Olympics to be here in 2028. We talk about it now, but it's 4 years away. But, man, those 4 years, they're going to fly by.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, the next Olympics coming up in 2028. I think we're supposed to have flag football by then, so that'd be pretty cool as well.
Let's see it.
So, looking forward to all that. 1 hour down, one more hour to go. We'll jump back into the scrimmage conversation. Talk a little bit of defense coming up next and what Coach Beamer had to say about that from Saturday's scrimmage. It is the Extra Point. He is Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head on your Monday on the Game. 10 o'clock, welcome back in. Hour number 2, Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central along with you on your Monday here on the game. Jumping back into conversation about South Carolina's scrimmage number 1 from Saturday, as we are but 19 days away from the season kicking off against Old Dominion, where hopefully at the scrimmage we, at least from the coaching perspective, learned who was separating themselves, because I don't expect us to get a depth chart today or any time this week. But as you go into scrimmage number 2, which is coming up this weekend, at least getting an idea of what direction you're heading, who's likely to be a 1, who's likely to be a 2, and maybe you kind of solidify that a little bit more this upcoming weekend?
Gotta be. There is no reason. You don't have to put out a depth chart right now, and you don't have to put one out on Saturday. It's okay. However, you, in your mind, and they probably don't have to mention it to us directly, like who's a 1 or a 2, but they better have an idea of like, hey, like, you know, these guys are standing out. Like they are going to be our guys this year. Like it's got, after 2 scrimmages, like if you're not learning that, then something's up. But I think they are, and I feel like a lot of guys are progressing. They have a lot of good competition. And again, I kind of hope the offense is more productive this time around, because again, it seemed like they were able to run the ball a little bit. It seemed like they were able to make some plays, but they couldn't finish drives. So if they can finish drives offensively speaking, it's a great sign. But on the other side, it's also like the defense has done great, and I would like to see a little bit more of, you know, even play in terms of who plays well on Saturday.
Well, speaking of the offense from Saturday, as we transition to talking about the defense a little bit, let's get cut number 10. This is Shane Beamer talking about who managed to find the end zone in the scrimmage on Saturday.
Not many, Dave. Like I said, we had some drives that we didn't finish. Whether we got in scoring territory and we missed a field goal, we got in scoring territory and we lost had some negative yardage plays on offense. It took us out of field goal range. We had Mike caught a pass, and we had a little goal line play. So the offense started on the 2-yard line, and it was so they didn't like drive the ball down the field. And Matthew Fuller, I believe, scored on that one with that group. Isaiah McCleary had an interception. I think that's back-to-back times in the stadium now, because he had one in the spring game too. So that's a positive for the offense. We didn't, for the most part, they didn't turn the ball over. We had one interception, and that was just on a little hitch route out in the flat, and Isaiah made a good play at the corner position. So offensively pleased, because we didn't turn the ball over. We can't beat ourselves and shoot ourselves in the foot and not finish drives. So we need, from a head coach standpoint, defensively, we need more takeaways. From a head coach standpoint, offensively, proud of the offense, the way they protected the football. And we didn't have a lot of pre-snap penalties on either side of the ball, which was very good. And I think it was 103 total plays to have very few pre-snap penalties. That's a good thing, especially out there in that heat. Now we got to be better about just making sure we don't have the holding penalties and the hands to the face and some of that stuff that we had today that are critical penalties while the play.
You've sat in many Coach Beamer pressers. Did he seem a little annoyed for like the first half or 2/3 of that yesterday on Saturday?
Yeah. And again, he was very good about answering questions, and he didn't really shy away from not wanting to reveal some certain things. I think he was very honest and open, and I think that's important as a head coach now in his 4th year. And again, what's he gonna lose from saying like this isn't good enough? Like, right, we didn't do well. Like, it's not like he's revealing, we ran this play and, right, Sellers just didn't get enough air on the ball. Like, you're not revealing the nitty-gritty details. You're just kind of showing, like, what happened. Because, again, we weren't there to see it. And so I think specifically the one thing that stood out to me was he was honest about the kicking competition, man. Like, it sounds like it's a problem right now. Yeah. And it's not surprising.
Well, we'll get to the kicking competition in just a moment, but he mentioned there with the offense, which the offense is expected to be behind the defense at this point in time. That's just kind of a natural thing.
That's always how it's been.
Especially when you're breaking in a new quarterback, trying to figure out your receivers, trying to figure out our offensive line. Like, that makes sense. I'm not exactly panicked about that. The penalties are something that you do need to clean up, which, again, that's what scrimmages are for, to get guys in game scenarios to kind of fine-tune some of those things. But, that at least is a positive for the defense. And kind of looking at the list here of what the reports are coming away from the scrimmage, some of the standout names: Debo, Brian Thomas Jr., TJ Sanders, Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart. As we kind of expected with the experience that you have up front, it's going to be these guys at the first two levels that can be making a lot of noise, hopefully this season, on the defense.
And again, we talk about the offense struggling a little bit. It's also a great sign that it means that the defense was playing well. From what Beamer said and what we've known, it's the defense, when the offense was getting down in deep territory, the defense was able to step up and make plays. And that is a great sign, because I fully expect the defense to be so much better this year, especially up front on that defensive line. But again, offensively, you're still figuring out, like you said, Tyler, you're figuring out who your receivers are going to be. You're figuring out, okay, you didn't have Rocket Sanders out there as well. So you're playing Oscar Attaway, Jawarn Howell, DJ Braswell, Matthew Fuller, Juju McDowell. Oh, Juju McDowell didn't play on Saturday. But guys like that. And then you're also figuring out, okay, well, think about it this way. Lenore Sellers wasn't getting all the reps on Saturday. So think about how much different things would be if this were a real game and Lenore's is out there starting every snap and Nick Harbor's on the field, Delvon Campbell, Jacobs, Jared Brown, guys like that. Your regular starters, it's a different deal. And by the time week one gets here in 19 days, I expect this team to be completely different. I expect them to be ready. And just because of one scrimmage, I'm not basing all of what's going to happen this year just off of what I heard. Again, we need to see it with our own eyes.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it either. And again, that's kind of a natural progression as you're going through camp and early scrimmages. The defense are going to be, ahead of the offense. And we don't know how many different offensive line combinations they had. I imagine they were probably cycling through a few different things. Because, again, outside of Rashawn Lee at center, I mean, everything else is still pretty fair game right now. Yeah,
no Marquis Anderson either. I don't expect him to start. I mean, he could start, but I don't think so. I do think Marquis will definitely see a lot of reps this year. But with that O-line, I'm wondering what the combination is ultimately going to be, because maybe we get to see Josiah Thompson at left tackle. Maybe that moves Tree over to right tackle or right guard. Vershawn Lee's obviously going to probably start at center, and then you get Ja'Kai Moore at left guard. I wonder kind of how, and I don't think Ja'Kai was in the scrimmage either, by the way. So there were definitely pieces on that O-line that weren't playing. I wonder what this O-line's ultimately going to look like. I don't know. Again, there's a lot of time left to go through scrimmages and kind of fine-tune and find your best combination, because that's ultimately what it's about right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned all these guys that were sitting out. Nobody's injured severely. It's more precautionary than anything else.
Exactly.
And nobody got injured in the scrimmage coming away from it. So as of right now, knock on wood, everybody's healthy across the board, which is a good thing, because, even going into last year, we had, Jalen Nichols' injury that put him out for the entire season. So, thankfully that hasn't really started here. And again, a guy like Rocket Sanders, you don't need him to go out there and prove to you anything. You know what you have in him. He's going to be fine as long as he doesn't get hurt. And again, even in a week one game like Old Dominion, probably going to be a pitch count to diminish any chance for injuries before you start playing the meaningful games against, Kentucky and LSU over the course of the next couple of weeks. But, with that, you have the offense kind of figuring out what's going to be happening behind him. Looking at the notes here, Oscar Attaway had some hard runs, showed his versatility. Seems like everybody's pretty high on Matthew Fuller as well. He's somebody, and I'm glad they have the rule now where you can play up to 4 games in redshirt, because you want to preserve eligibility, but if he's good enough to be on the field, you got a hard time keeping it on the sidelines. You know what I mean? So you at least, and again, week number 1 could be a good opportunity to maybe get as many guys out there as possible to kind of see what you have against another opponent, to see, okay, are we going to go the route of letting Fuller play, or are we going to go and redshirt him for this year and save him for later?
I'd be willing to bet he redshirts. And I'm not saying that because he's not a good player. He seems like a great player, great kid and all that. And but he's a freshman. It's like he's going to be behind on the depth chart, behind potentially 5 guys, right? You have Rocket Sanders is probably your 1. Oscar Attaway your 2. I would be willing to bet DJ Braswell may end up being your 3. Jawarn Howell, Juju McDowell, I mean, you can really mix up the 2 through 5 however you want. I think they'll all see a good amount of reps. And then there's Matthew Fuller probably. So unless he's having like a really few touchdowns over these next few scrimmages, it's kind of like, why not let him get the reps he can in games when it's garbage time or whatever, and then let him redshirt, do the Lenore Sellers treatment, but at running back with a lot of vets in there, like you could definitely learn a thing or two from. And then next year, it's like, hey, this could be your team. This could be your year because Rocket's going to be gone next year. Oscar Attaway's going to be gone next year. Jawarn Howell will be probably back, I would imagine.
Yeah, he's only a sophomore.
Yeah. DJ Braswell. Juju, he's now like a senior? He's been here for a minute.
I'm pretty sure he is. Let me double check on that.
So, I mean, the point is, I think you're going to have a lot of guys gone next year in that running back room. And then whoever you have left, I mean, it's younger guys, but again, they're getting that experience, getting the help from the older guys that have been there, done that, like Rocket and such.
Yeah, so the guys listed as seniors, Rocket, Attaway, and Juju McDowell. So your 3 underclassmen are Braswell, Howell, and Fuller as of right now.
Again, they're going to bring in more guys from the portal. They're going to have more recruits coming in. They will be fine at that position.
And I think it's always important to note, and Preston and I talked about this last week, kind of looking back at notes from prior year scrimmages where there's names on there that had great performances that never did anything during the season. So you got to take all this with a grain of salt. Now, yes, saying somebody like if Rocket Sanders played, had a good scrimmage, that could be an indication of what's to come. But again, for them talking about Fuller, he may never see the field this year. Or if he does, it's in very insignificant garbage time. So he might be the guy you kind of got to pump the brakes on. But good to hear that things looking encouraging for him for whatever role they end up, finding for him this fall.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a bad thing to sit behind and get reps. I know most guys think they're the greatest thing ever since sliced bread, and they want to play right away. And if they don't, they're going to transfer. Like, I think in today's age, it's very important to have a year to learn and get developed in the college football game. Like, Lenore Sellers is a great example. I think if he really turns out to be the guy this year, it's kind of like, hey, who knows what could happen? And I think the same thing could be said for Matthew Fuller. And again, if injuries happen or anything, who knows, man? He could be the guy. Like Texas and Texas A&M, they both lost their starting running back. So anything's possible, and I would definitely expect to see Fuller see some reps maybe. But again, garbage time probably.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned a moment ago, Coach Beamer, very honest about the kicking conversation, as it's something I think we view as a under the rated battle going into camp.
Very.
But my urgency for this just ratcheted up a couple notches. Well, let's hear what Coach Beamer had to say about kicking coming up as we make our way through the first scrimmage and react to everything that we've learned coming away from it. Reminder, you can watch us on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media all day long. Just go to youtube.com, search the Game TV, subscribe to us, hit the bell icon to stay notified anytime we are live. And again, watch us each and every day on the Game TV. It is the Extra Point. He is Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Felcher along with you on your Monday here on the game as we navigate through the weekend that was for scrimmages and practices for South Carolina football as we get closer to the start of the season. Again, just 19 days away from Carolina and Old Dominion squaring off in week number 1. And as I mentioned in the last segment there, a battle that we didn't give a lot of attention to for most of the offseason, but one that I think in the back of our minds we knew was going to be a talking point when camp rolled around was going to be at kicker, because Mitch Jeter, 2 good seasons here, 23 of 25 as far as field goals. He's now transferred on to Notre Dame, so he's no longer a factor here. Alex Herrera and William Joyce enter the conversation. These guys have been on campus for a while. Herrera's a 6-year senior, so they're familiar with the program, obviously been in the room with Mitch Jeter for a long time. Which one of those guys could come out on top in terms of winning the kicking battle? Let's get Coach Beamer. Let's get cut number 15 here, Terry. Let's get Coach Beamer talking about the kicking competition based on what he's seen so far and what he saw in the scrimmage on Saturday. To be cut 15.
I think it's been very inconsistent. I think all those guys have had opportunities in practice that they've taken advantage of, and then they've also missed some really good opportunities to take a step forward. So it's I don't think we're any closer to having a starter at that position. I'm not worried, but it just overall has not been consistent as much as I would like. Having said, Kai Kroger and Mason Love are punting the crap out of the ball right now, so I'm really excited about those 2 guys and the way they're hitting it. And our kickers will be fine. They just we've got to keep putting them in pressure situations. And one thing that we've done this year preseason different is just putting them in pressure situations where something's on the line for the whole team, good or bad, depending on their kick, and trying to create those, if not daily, pretty much daily.
So, I said this earlier, Coach Beamer tends to skew positive when talking about things. Even when things aren't going great, he's always going to put a good twist on it, right? Yep. That's just his personality, and that's fine. That's what kind of coach he is. When he says kicking is inconsistent, that raises a major red flag in my mind, because, and especially when we're talking about special teams, because that is so vitally important to Beamer and his DNA as a coach, I'm worried now.
I would be. I mean, look, he's had it pretty good over the last few years. He had Parker White in 2021, and obviously he's USC's all-time scoring leader. And then you have Mitch Jeter the last 2 years. In 2022 was obviously he was 100% from field goal range. And last year obviously wasn't as good, but it was still a very respectable, solid year. He goes on to Notre Dame. Now you got 2 guys who have been around the program for a few years that we haven't really heard much about, Alex Herrera and William Joyce. Mm-hmm. And they've been around the entire time since Parker White was even here. So, again, they've been around for a long time, but it doesn't seem like they are up to that quality. And when you have guys like that beforehand that were so good, it's tough to feel like, hey, these guys are taking a step back compared to what we're so used to. And kicking is it's such an underrated part of the game. Like, you can say what you want, like, oh, kickers don't make any impact. Okay, let's see. Well, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. Like, let's see when they go down Kentucky, if the game comes down the wire and they have a chance to win the game with a field goal and they miss, we're gonna be like, yeah. What are we doing here? And you could always be like, hey, Mason Love, that's our guy. Like, we'll have him for the future. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now. He doesn't seem like he's going to be kicking field goals this year.
That was another thing that I brought up earlier, that if we suddenly start hearing that Mason Love is in the competition for kicking field goals, I think it's really time to worry, because that is your third option that you probably didn't think you were going to get to.
No, and he's a very highly recruited guy. Like, South Carolina brought him in for a reason, and he's going to be the future at that position.
Sounds like he's pushing Kai Kroger for the starting punting job. Like, he's killing it right now.
That would be crazy.
And I think he's supposed to handle kickoffs too.
So,
correct?
Yeah, so I did talk to him a few weeks ago, and I did ask him about what we should expect from him this year. It does seem like kickoff duties are probably number one. Okay. We could see him holding a little bit, but in terms of punting and field goals and stuff. I wouldn't expect. I think Kai is going to win the job at that position. I think he's due for a bounce back year, but we'll have to see what happens. And again, Beamer said Kai is killing it right now with kicking and stuff. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just field goals right now. It's kicking competition. It's not surprising, but it's like we got to be better at this position, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, somebody's going to come out of camp winning the job. My thing is, and again, as I mentioned, Herrera is a 6-year senior. He's been on campus for a very long time. He's kicked 4 extra points. William Joyce, I think's a redshirt junior. He's been on campus for a while. No significant kicks in his career.
No.
And I'm sure these guys did plenty of big kicks in high school and stuff like that.
Different.
But there is a difference, for one, in doing it at the college level, and two, doing it the first time in a while. You can put them in scenarios and practice and stuff like that. But like you mentioned, if we're on the road to Kentucky in week 2, and you have a last-second field goal to try and win the game in front of tens of thousands of people, it's a situation that a Herrera's not been in his entire life. Can he step up to that moment? I don't know.
I'm going to tell you what, man. And I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer or a hater or whatever the case is, because that's not what I am. I just don't see this whole, whoever wins this competition, I could definitely see some rough patches throughout the season. These guys will be good inside of 35 or less yards, I'm sure, in home games and stuff. And they'll tease us with a good amount of field goals probably in that first game, because I think some drives are going to stall out in week 1 and they'll have some field goal opportunities. But, man, week 2, it's if you miss that first field goal, you're doomed. I just see a lot of opportunities this year going to waste because offense couldn't finish drives and the kickers couldn't make field goals.
And, again, most kickers can make under 35 consistently. One good thing about Kai Kroger, he could make you it from 50 plus.
Yeah.
Those are the critical field goals that you're going to need when your drive stalls out at the 35-yard line. So it's okay, here comes a 52-yard field goal. Do we think this guy can make it? You want to be able to think to yourself, yes, okay, that means anytime we get within this range of the field, get past the 40-yard line, we know we're at least going to be able to walk away with 3 points.
I feel like it's going to be like bringing EA College Football 25 to life. You're kicking from 45 yards out, and in your mind, you're like, we can make this.
Sure.
In a real game, we can make this. And then the kicking meter goes crazy and stuff. That's kind of what I feel like. I'm not saying these guys are going to miss every single time when the pressure's on. But at the same time, it's if you miss that first big kick, it's kind of it takes the wind out of your sail.
Sure.
And it makes you feel it's in the back of your mind next time out. You're second guessing yourself, hey, am I going to be able to make this? Maybe these guys have a different mentality and stuff and can block that out. But it's got to impact you. Some teams have been through it before with bad kicking, and South Carolina hasn't really been like that over the years. I feel like this could be the first year where it's kind of it's not as reliable as it used to be.
By the way, I've just taken to simming my kicks on EA 25. I don't even try anymore.
I've had so many kicks that I'll try from 45 yards out. Make sometimes I've gotten better with it, but some of them land in the stands on the sideline.
I'm you know what? I'm just gonna sim it. I got a strong enough kicker. I'll sim it and move on to the next drive, because I've missed far too many field goals so far. I don't have any confidence in myself as a kicker.
No, and you hope for these kids' sake in real life that we've seen it over the years. Watching a lot of Alabama games growing up, just Bama having bad field goal kickers and missing field goals, and you see these guys get absolutely torn apart.
Yeah,
and you really hope that these guys have, even if they miss field goals, it's not that serious.
I always thought it's hilarious that Alabama could get the best talent at every position, but until Will Reichert, they didn't have a competent field goal kicker.
No, they really no, those early 2010s were they were rough.
What was, because the game of the century?
I'll tell you, I can break it down for you.
Okay, go ahead.
I still remember that game. Cade Foster.
That wasn't a
Cade Foster
yes.
missed, I believe, 3 field goals that game against Auburn. The kick six game.
They would have.
The kick six would have never happened had he probably made 1 or 2 of those field goals.
Yeah.
And then you get last second. You bring out a freshman who ended up being a fine kicker for Alabama. But at the time, it's like you're bringing in Adam Griffith, who has never kicked in this type of situation. It's a 57-yard field goal. And again, I don't know why. It goes back to the play before where TJ Yeldon gets that little dump off pass, goes out of bounds with the second left. You should have just taken the zeros and gone to overtime. But again, they kicked the field goal, and we know what happened. So
the rest is history.
Exactly. So let's hope for South Carolina's sake, it's nothing on that level.
I want to remind you real quick, Craft Beer Card is back. You can spend $30 a brewery at 12 different craft beer locations to the $360 value, all yours for just $79. Go online to 1075thegame.com and click on the Sweet Deals tab to purchase a Craft Beer Card. We are about an hour and a half away from the first AP poll getting released for the 2024 college football season. We'll try and guess the top 10 and see which fan bases are going to be the most angry later on this afternoon. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. He's Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head on your Monday on the Game.
Oh, good.
Haven't heard anything different. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher, along with you on your Monday here on the Game. As we get closer to the start of college football season, that means we got to have rankings to tell us who good and tell us who sucks, at least for the first part of the year. So the AP poll is really funny to me because, yes, back in the day, it used to be part of the BCS formula and all that kind of stuff where, yes, what the writers wrote or what the writers decided on did matter. And again, it crowned the national champion for decades and decades and decades. It literally has no weight now. No. The AP poll does not have any influence on the college football playoff, does not determine who goes to bowl games, who goes to the playoff, or anything like that. It is merely a benchmark that we use until the actual playoff standings come out. That being said, people get so upset about the AP poll for the first 10 weeks of the year. It's hilarious to me because you have to remind them, like, this, it's just a guideline. Like, it's not, it doesn't matter.
It's like, who cares? Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, honestly, like, if you're not, it's like, if you're, you know, I don't know, let's say you're 6-0 and you're, I don't know, Clemson, you know, 6-0, and you're the only, like, one of the only undefeated teams, and you're number 2 in the poll, and Georgia's like number 1, and they are, 5-1 or whatever. It's like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter until once the CFP polls start coming out every week.
Because that, like, literally decides who goes to the playoff.
Exactly. Like, that's the thing about the AP poll and all these other polls in general. Like, it's I guess it's fun to look at, but it's like, well, when it really comes down to it, it's like, it doesn't matter.
And there is value to having a number by your name when you're playing during the season. And again, until we get the college football playoff poll, much like, before we got the BCS poll back in the day, we just had to go off this because it's the only major poll that we have that holds, any kind of influence. I don't want to say weight because it doesn't hold weight, but any kind of influence. That being said, again, it comes out at noon today for the preseason poll. Let's see if we can figure out what this top 10 is going to look like. I think it kind of goes without saying Georgia and Ohio State are going to be number 1, number 2. That's going to be pretty consistent across the board, I feel like. Maybe you flip those. Maybe you say Ohio State's 1 or Georgia's 2. But I think those two teams, I'd be shocked if anybody else was in a top 2 spot.
Hey, you don't see South Carolina being number 1? What is this we're talking about here?
If South Carolina was in the top 25, I think we would all be pleasantly surprised.
Yes. No, but jokes aside, I do think Georgia's probably number 1. Ohio State definitely going to be number 2. After that, it's kind of interesting because it's like you could throw your Texas, your Oregons, your Bamas in there. I think those are your other top 5 teams. The order in which they're in, I'm not sure. Personally, I would put Oregon at 3. Mm-hmm. I would put Texas at 4 and Bama at 5, but that's just me. I'm not sure. What do you say?
That's the way the coaches poll had it. I might lean a little more towards Texas at 3 and Oregon at 4.
Yeah.
I think the returning quarterback of Ewers has a lot of weight with that. Alabama at 5 because
they're still Alabama.
They're still Alabama, but I got to see Kalen DeBoer's Alabama to definitively be able to say that they're still the same type of Alabama, which I don't doubt that they can be. And again, obviously coming off a great year last year, going to the Rose Bowl and the college football playoff and all that kind of stuff, but I am apprehensive on them. So that's why they're kind of at the back half of the top 5 for me until proven otherwise. Now, if they go out there and slaughter everybody by 30 points like they used to, then yeah, for sure, I'll be having a different conversation. But until I see it on full display, and plus they lost to Texas last year, I can't put them above Texas or Oregon for that matter.
No, and you definitely can't because, again, we don't know what it's going to look like. And even if Nick Saban was back this year, I still think Bama would probably be right around like that 5 range. But other SEC teams I feel like we could definitely see in there. I want to say just because of how good they were last year, and who knows what they look like this year, they could end up being like a 6-win team or something. But I think they're going to be good again. Missouri. I think Missouri deserves its place in the around at least probably like 9 or 10.
Yeah. I would say so. And coaches poll gave them 11. I think that's a little bit of a knock, especially putting them behind Penn State. I think that they're a better team than Penn State.
I think Penn State's always overrated.
And again, I go back to quarterback slot because that is very heavily weighted, in my opinion, because that's obviously the most important position. But I look at a guy like Brady Cook, who last year was really consistent. And, nobody was talking about him on the Heisman list or anything like that, but he was very effective, very consistent. We saw that against South Carolina as well. He's got a returning perhaps the best wide receiver in the entire country in Luther Burden. Like, this Missouri team on paper should be still pretty solid this year. So I agree with you. I think they should find their way somewhere within 9th or 10th in the top 10 somewhere, at least to start out the season in the AP poll.
Now, we did mention Penn State right before.
Yes.
And I do think you put them up against each other. I think Missouri could beat Penn State. That's just me. But I do think Penn State every year, regardless of whether, I think maybe this new format. This is Penn State's best chance to make the playoff because I don't think they were ever making it.
This 12-team playoff was made for Penn State
because again they always came up short. So I think Penn State's probably somewhere in this mix. Probably Notre Dame as well. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like who else are you going to put in the top 10? I mean, Michigan should be in there.
That's my question. Should Michigan be in the top 10? Because, okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? We've seen this before with LSU a couple seasons ago, Auburn, when they won the national championship with Cam, where you had this team that was so chock full of talent that won the national championship. You knew the next season you're losing a lot of that talent. They're not going to be the same. Do you give them the benefit of the doubt of just being the defending national champion to put them in the top 10?
Again, I don't know. I think you just do. Like, I'm trying to think. There was an example recently a few years ago where there was I can't remember who it was, really good team. They were coming off winning a title of some sort, and then they didn't have a great year. I cannot remember who I'm thinking of, but I think you just gotta, until proven otherwise. It's kind of like the whole Bama thing. Until proven otherwise,
sure,
put them in. And I mean, it's just like there's so many other teams that are pretty good, but I don't think they're top 10 worthy teams. Florida State, I feel like, is probably the one team that probably going to be on the outside that should be in the top 10. But I mean, after that, it's like LSU, Clemson, Miami, Oklahoma, A&M. I mean, are those top 10 teams? I don't think so. I mean, there's a few. Again, it's all speculation right now, and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Right.
But it's like there's some great teams, but there's also a lot of teams that are good right now that can be great. But when we're basing it off of preseason stuff, they're still good teams, and we can't put them in the top 10 yet.
Speaking of one SEC team that might have a shot at being in the top 5, what about Ole Miss?
Yeah, we haven't talked about them yet.
I mean, from coming off of a historic year last year, winning 11 games, winning the transfer portal this offseason, the hype train for them is through the roof. I mean, I've penciled them into my college football playoff. I don't know about you, but if they were like 4th, would that shock you?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't shock me. I'm going to look at their schedule real quick, and I think we've talked about it before. Their non-conference schedule is...
Oh, well, I mean, the games they play before South Carolina are cakewalks for the most part.
Pretty much. You have a trip to Wake in there, and that can be tough, but against Wake, I don't expect much. I mean, the schedule for Ole Miss, I mean, potentially, I see maybe 2 losses on the schedule, maybe 3 if things play out.
But again, 10-2, you can still get in the playoff.
Exactly.
From what we think.
But I think from the hype this team gets with all the new guys they brought in, you're thinking like 11-1, making the SEC title game for the first time, taking over. Like, I'm thinking with Ole Miss, with everything they've done, at some point, if the West and East still existed, I feel like Ole Miss would be the team to take over Bama's spot at the top there. But because it's not the case, it's going to be tougher. But I do think, I mean, the only losses I could potentially see on the schedule, a trip to Death Valley right after South Carolina with no bye week in between could be tough. And especially if South Carolina plays up that game and wins.
Sure.
Then it's like, dang, like this whole season could really be coming down to that LSU game. And then you have a trip to Florida that comes right after you get Georgia at home. So it's like, those are your 2 toughest parts of the season. And I don't care what you say about South Carolina not being on the same level as Ole Miss. That South Carolina game is going to be so tough for them just because of everything
for sure
that is coming into it. And if it's a night game, it's going to be insane. So
again, AP poll coming up later on today, being released at noon. Reminder, Summer Golf Classic coming up at Charwood on August 23rd. We'll be raffling off football tickets as well as crowning our ultimate season ticket giveaway winner. You can call Charwood to sign up your foursome at 803-755-2000. Again, 803-755-2000. Register for our Summer Golf Classic at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. Come back, wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. Hear a little bit from Cam Scott as Jack Veltri spoke to him over the weekend. That's next on The Extra Point here on The Game.
Honestly, building a better relationship with my teammates. I feel like team chemistry is very special, especially going into March and April. That's one of the biggest things that you want to have, even going into SEC play. Our chemistry has been honestly through the roof throughout the summer, but if we just keep getting better at that, everything's going to come a lot easier.
Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central hanging out for a few more minutes here, wrapping up hour number 2. That was the voice of new member of South Carolina men's basketball, Cam Scott, getting set for his freshman season coming up here in a couple months. You actually got a chance to speak to him out at one of his community events. Obviously, a local kid from Lexington. What was going on with all this over the weekend?
Yeah, so Cam Scott it was called a back to school weekend, and he went back to his old middle school, Pleasant Hill Middle School in Lexington, where he played basketball growing up. And he held a basketball camp on Saturday, and that was really nice and all. And then yesterday he held a bowling event somewhere in Irmo. So it was good for him. You know, a freshman, I spoke to him about, I don't remember many freshmen doing stuff like this, especially in this age of NIL. But it's good that he wants to give back and stuff. And he comes from a good family, nice people and all that. And it doesn't surprise me to see the type of kid he is. But talking to him a little bit about the team and stuff, I asked him a little bit about CMB and how that three-point shot has developed over the summer, because that's one thing that we didn't really get to see with Colin Murray Boyles' game last year.
We heard about it. And we heard about how good he was in practice, but we never saw it on full display. And so I think that's something we could see more of this year. And it seems like that thing has really developed, as well as his game in general. And I asked him, like, you know, when you're coming to South Carolina, I mean, was CMB like a selling point of like, hey, like we can make a good tandem. Like, I'm not saying it's gonna be Kobe Shaq, but like it could be something, right? And I think he was very high on CMB, and like, you want to play with great players. Like, that's the key. Sure.
And so I don't know how much he's gonna play this year. I think he's gonna be a very impactful freshman this year, and I don't expect him to redshirt by any means, but playing with a guy like that and the other guys on the court, like, he's learning a lot from Jamari Thomas and Jacoby Wright. Like, he has said it multiple times now. He's been asking those guys lots of questions, trying to learn as much as he can. And that's the best thing you can do, especially in your first summer heading into what's going to be a very big year for South Carolina. Because it's not like last year where you're coming off an 11-win year. You're coming into a year where it's like expectations are higher. You're trying to get back to the tournament again. Now let's see what you can do as a really highly recruited guy.
And we were all talking about this in the break there, and you know, Cam Scott was here when he made his flip announcement from Texas to South Carolina. You've gotten to be around him a few times. He just has that kind of maturity beyond his years, it seems like, and that is kind of become a staple of guys within Lamont Paris's system. You know, you look at the guys from the transfer portal, you look at CMB, now you look at Cam Scott. They all kind of match Paris's personality in a way. And I feel like, not that Paris can't coach guys of different personalities, but he definitely likes to bring in like-minded, like personality type of guys that, you know, are going to be comfortable doing what he does on the court, as well as his coaching style. And again, for what we saw last year, it has worked very well.
It seemingly works, right? I mean, year one, we talked about before, you had to bring in Gigi Jackson, and that was a whole thing. And
which that was already in place before
so Lamont really didn't have a choice.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to say, well, I don't want the 5-star kid.
No. But again, now last year and going into this year, there's a core, right? There's a core of young guys that are very level-headed, you know, good basketball players. They know what they're doing. And that core really consists of, now it's Cam Scott, Colin Murray Boyles, Zach Davis, Arden Conyers. I definitely expect to have a big role this year. You have guys like that. You bring in the new guys. You have the older, experienced vets. This is a good mix, and I think it really works. Like, I think this could be Lamont's best team, just because you're getting those guys back off a year where they made the tournament, and now it's like, okay, we're gonna try to get back there again, but we're not only going to just get back there. We're not going for the 1 or 2 days. We're trying to make this a weekend by weekend thing and get to the Final Four. I mean, I think they can do it. It's just, how do these guys mesh and how do they translate over to the court? Cam Scott being a big one because, again, he's a freshman, and it is going to be interesting to see how he does right out of the gate.
Well, and, you know, they're not going to be able to play the chip on their shoulder card this year because I think everybody, not that I don't know if you guys can predict them to win the whole conference, but they're definitely going to be in the conversation for maybe one of the top 5 teams going into this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how Paris goes about it from a coaching standpoint of saying, hey, now that people don't doubt us like they did a year ago, how do we go about using, what is our motivating tool this time around?
And I know we talked about that not too long ago with this whole top 5 potential conversation where they might rank in the SEC. I still think they're going to get counted out. Like, I think they're definitely inside that top 8 range.
Right.
But I think they're definitely on the back half of it. It's just like they're going to find something to where I think there's people out there that still don't believe this team is for real. I think they think it's a one-year wonder. It just, everything kind of clicked. They had the easy non-conference schedule. This year it's a little tougher. Like, you're going to Indiana, you're going to Boston College.
Sure.
You got the Fort Myers tournament where you're going to have the Sean Miller game. Like,
yep.
If you play well and do well in that stretch, including Clemson, who knows, man?
Well, we haven't got football season yet, but basketball will be
It's
here
right around the corner
before we know it. Appreciate it as always, Jack. We'll catch you back in here later on in the week.
Thank you so much, man. I always appreciate it.
That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. More insight from scrimmage and practice over the weekend here on The Game. 11 o'clock on your Monday. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, along with you, ever closer to the start of college football. 19 days away from South Carolina and Old Dominion. And this past weekend, we got our first scrimmage in the books on Saturday. You guys got to be out there at another practice on Sunday as well. So plenty of things to dive into over the course of the next hour as we're slowly trying to figure out what exactly this team's going to look like this year.
You know how I know it's actually almost football season is that we didn't get a text from Tyler asking what we were going to talk about today. It's just known.
This is the time of year where it gets a little bit easier. Planning the show is a little bit easier than, the middle of July.
Yes. So, like you said, scrimmage. Then they'll have scrimmage 2 this coming Saturday. And, I mean, very, very soon, guys. We're, 19 days?
That's right.
We'll be talking about a game week soon.
Can't wait. Almost there.
Have you found our Old Dominion guest yet?
I will work on that. I don't know how many people cover Old Dominion, but I'm sure there are some out there.
I thought you had already found one.
We had sometime back in June, I think. We may have to circle back around and see if we can find that guy again. But they're out there, just not as prevalent as some of the, SEC beat writers. But we'll find somebody to give us the lowdown on the Monarchs.
Yeah.
I forgot that was their name.
I think you broke Chris's brain for a second, but so we did learn a few things, I think, from this weekend. Chris was out there for the open portion yesterday, and I was at the press conference on Saturday after the scrimmage. And, guys, I think these position battles obviously are not over, but you're starting to maybe find out exactly where some things are. And, I think with one of the more interesting ones to me is still that spot at cornerback opposite of O.D. Fortune. And, I think that's one where we have sort of observed that the staff has gradually felt better and better about, regardless of whoever takes that spot, that they're going to be able to hold it down and kind of give them the production they need from that spot, while also whoever doesn't win that spot maybe provides a little bit more depth than we have seen in the past. But it appears, and Beamer talked about it, 2 little details from Saturday. One being that he fully expects all those guys. So obviously we know OD, but talk about Judge Collier, talk about Vakari Swain, talk about Emory Floyd. All those guys project to play game 1. And then as of right now, which was kind of the default based on what we saw last year in terms of playing time, Judge Collier still taking most of the reps with the ones at that spot opposite of O.D. Fortune. So, again, 19 days away. That doesn't mean it's solidified. That doesn't mean somebody else can't step in there. But I would say now we have months of evidence there that maybe Collier's your guy. Are we calling this race yet? I guess not. But I would say we're at the point where it'd be an upset if Judge Collier is not your day one starter at the spot opposite of OD.
And I think that's what's so important about this first scrimmage, is not to definitively set the depth chart. And I think we talked about this earlier. I think it was after the second one we got the first look at the depth chart last year. Was it after third?
It's always game week.
Always game week.
There's no third scrimmage. It's always basically a weekend off prior to the actual opener.
But the first scrimmage at least allows you the opportunity to see who's perhaps setting themselves apart a little bit. Where, again, you're not nailing down who the starter is going to be, but it's giving you an idea of which way you're probably leaning as we get closer to the start of the season, right?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that battle, Shane Beamer said in his scrimmage wrap-up press conference that same day on Saturday, hey, all of those guys are going to play. And the guys he mentioned were Judge, and he also mentioned Vakari Swain, and he mentioned Emory Floyd, right? Which it seemed like in the spring it was Judge kind of had the leg up. It seemed like Vakari was kind of maybe next man up, and Emory Floyd was also, he was kind of like the honorable mention, like in that group. It wasn't as much that way on Saturday. So my question is just, how is that going to work? You know, because it's a different situation than like O.D. Fortune. We know he's a starter, right? So what does that mean? Does that mean you play matchups? Does that mean you rotate? We've seen them rotate in the secondary, you know, when they don't have a position that's maybe as settled. We've seen them rotate based on matchups, which we've all speculated. Hey, with some of the guys that you've got between corner and nickel and even at safety, you know, can you play matchups a little bit in certain instances? And, you know, a third down package, a dime package, you know, just, hey, we want this particular player to match up against this particular guy in the slot. More of a coverage corner as opposed to a nickel. I don't know, but what I do know, man, is I just can't shake the feeling that Bakari Swain is really continuing to assert himself as a guy that the staff is looking at and going, man, we really need to find a way to get him involved. And that can be on special teams. He's one of many guys that's still auditioning as a punt returner. They have some interesting options there. But as a corner, too, I mean, got a chance on Sunday to watch some one-on-ones, and Swain had, you know, a big play there repping some red zone one-on-ones, and he had, you know, just one rep, but he had a perfect coverage rep that Shane Beamer really praised him for. So he's just, I think, one of the more athletic guys on the team, one of the higher upside guys on the team.
And this is a guy that you guys have been on for a while now with what his abilities are athletically on the field and stuff like that. So, like I said, it wouldn't be a surprise if he's the one that ends up leading the way there.
I think Bakari is just one of those guys that's built different. And, you know, we can talk about athletes in different senses. And sometimes that's like, all right, you're Nick Harbor in that you're 6'5", 6'6", and, you know, you run 10-1 or whatever it is he runs. And that's a certain type of athleticism. With Bakari, it's not just like size-speed combination type thing. It's just the suddenness with which he can move his body and the ability to leap and the ability to just sort of have effortless movement skills really stands out with Bakari. Now, I think at some point we have to acknowledge maybe we've all sold Judge Collier a little bit short just because he was an under-the-radar guy, wasn't really highly recruited, was kind of it was like a camp offer, and, oh, yeah, he'll probably go to South Carolina, and wasn't really a contested recruitment for the most part. And so he has flown under the radar, and all the guy has done is just come in and play last year as a true freshman as essentially their third corner. So I do think there are some interesting things you can do if you want to get into like the schematics and kind of the matchups and personnel side of this thing. I think in just a old school rotation kind of mindset as well, could we see South Carolina, particularly against an Old Dominion, just say, look, hey, we're going to start OD and Judge, and depending on how this thing plays out, we know it's going to be hot. We know it's going to be humid. It always is. Just sort of, all right, first two drives, those two guys are out there. Drive 3, and I'm just picking a random example. Could be 4, could be 5, whatever. You know, a few drives in, hey, Bakari and Emery, you guys are rolling in. Could we see South Carolina? Like, I feel like depth can be in different ways. It can be, well, we feel like that guy can go in and give us, you know, a handful of snaps a game and it not be awful. Or there's like, hey, there's not really that much drop-off.
Yes.
Let's just keep all these guys fresh. And then whoever our best two are, either in general or maybe sometimes our best two that day, if it's fourth quarter and it's time to go win a game and it's time to go get that stop, I mean, how many times have we seen, Chris, you pull up that PFF and you get the snap count and you're putting it together on a Sunday or Monday, and however many snaps the defense has taken, you're like, corners and safeties are like at the top of the thing.
Yeah, they're way up there.
I mean, it's not like you're not running. Like you're running a lot if you're playing defensive back. And I know those guys are super athletic and in shape, but it has to wear on you throughout the course of a game. It has to wear on you throughout the course of a season. So I don't want to get into ifs, ands, and buts, but, I mean, Does South Carolina make one tackle and get off the field late in a game against Florida? Like, I know we're talking in hypotheticals, but my point being, can having 15 less snaps per game for a starter every single game be a huge advantage for you in college football?
If there's not a big drop-off, like you said. And I think, it's more important. The closer you get to the ball, the more important it is to be able to have that legitimate depth. Starts with your defensive tackles, then out to your ends. Those big guys, that you can't play them as many snaps, frankly, as they've had to play some guys the past few years. Linebacker, same thing. You do feel like Carolina's going to be able to roll out some more, it's been called line changes. You feel like they're going to be able to do that this year. And when they do that you're not going to have as much of a drop-off between the first and second group. The secondary is an interesting one because did they ultimately feel like at corner, for instance, hey, we don't have a very big drop-off. Let's rest some of these guys. Or like I said, play situationally. Last year, just for context, Marcellus Dial now playing for the Patriots, of course. He played more snaps than anybody on the defense, played 853 snaps. Actually, the year before, he played more snaps than Darius Rush and Cam Smith as kind of the third corner, kind of nickel type guy. But Marcellus Dial played the most snaps on the team. And then the other corner was O.D. Fortune, of course, a co-starter, but he played 200 less snaps. Your third guy in there, your third corner, was Judge Collier, played 180 snaps. So could we see, less of a gap there in between your first and second guy and, your third, fourth, fifth? Maybe so with the guys that they have right now.
Continue to break down what happened at the scrimmage over the weekend. Let's hear from Coach Beamer coming up in just a minute. Reminder, as always, you can listen to us on the 107.5 The Game app. Download it from the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, and take us with you wherever you go. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here on The Game.
Thank you, sir. Our friends over at Integrated Media can make sure that your home is the place to be this upcoming football season. Season is right around the corner. We're at, 21 days, 3 weeks or so before 19 days. Yeah, the math was terrible on that. The guys at Integrated Media cannot help you with math. That would be August 33rd that I just made up. But what they can help you with is making sure your audio-visual setup is outstanding at your home. They can do everything from new television equipment. You don't have to go to the big box stores. They've got great customer service. They got their showroom on Snapdragon Court right over in Chapin. They can help you pick out the best equipment, and they can mount your TV for you. Make sure you have a great streaming signal throughout your home. Sonos wireless speakers, soundbar, whatever you may need. IntegratedMediaInc.com or 803-948-8327. Check them out on Instagram and Facebook. Integrated Media Columbia. That's Michael and Nathan at Integrated Media.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, West Metro, Chris Clark along with you on your Monday. Continuing to break down everything that we heard coming away from the weekend after South Carolina's first scrimmage on Saturday, trying to figure out a lot of different position groups. One of those in particular being wide receiver, which of course completely revamped room from a season ago. A lot of guys coming in from the transfer portal as well as some true freshmen that have already started turning some heads. Let's hear Coach Beamer talk about what he saw out of the wide receivers on Saturday.
Yeah, when you talk about that group, there's no question it is what it is. We have more smaller guys, if you will, than bigger guys. We don't have our top guys are not that body type. But then you also have, Dale Von Campbell and Nick Harbor, who are big bodies on the outside. So I think between Camp and Nick, you got two guys that give you that big presence at the receiver position. And then you've got some other guys that certainly can make plays and have a skill set. And then I wouldn't, rule out, I really like our tight end group. When you talk about Brady Hunt, you talk about Josh Simon. Nobody ever talks about Maurice Brown. That guy's going to play a lot for us on offense this year. Mike Smith, David mentioned him, is going to play a lot for us on offense this year. So we're excited about what those two guys have brought to the equation in that tight end room. And like I told our team the other day, Jack, like my job as the head coach is every single week to do what gives us the best chance to be successful and put the best 11 guys out there to play. And whether that means 4 receivers or whether that means no receivers, will do what gives us the best chance to win football games. Same thing with running backs, tight ends. Let's find out what these guys do and give them opportunities to go make plays at the running back, tight end, and receiver position.
So he managed to list off a bunch of names. So what, if anything, do we know differently about this room coming away from the weekend than we did going into it?
I think we're getting puzzle pieces, guys. Like we talk about that. You get as many puzzle pieces as you can, and then you try to give the listeners and readers the best view of the puzzle as you can. And so what we are learning as we go here, I think taking what he says combined with other things we've heard. So a couple of different things at play. For one, I'm close to being ready to say that, like, it sounds like Mazio Bennett has been like their most consistent wide receiver. And so, our Gamecock Central non-depth chart, we, that was a guy we went ahead and put as a quote-unquote starter preseason camp while having the caveat of we'll see. I tend to think we're kind of watching that play out before our very eyes. I think the guy, one of the wild cards, we call it. And by the way, are we officially Dre Jacobs instead of... Because I've been saying Vandrevius, but his name is Dre. So Vandrevius, I think the emphasis is on the Dre, but I think Dre Jacobs is a great wide receiver name.
It's a great name.
It's also a lot with that. Quicker to say.
Yeah, so yes. Dre Jacobs, until he tells us otherwise, we're going Dre Jacobs. And, dude, he was back out there Sunday, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Missed Saturday.
Full go.
If healthy, I think this kid is like on his way to starting. We'll see if he can maintain. It's all about consistency, I think, at wide receiver. So you notice at some point in that press conference, Beamer mentioned some drops. And, I think that's something, again, that this receiver group, that they are still sorting through who's going to be that other guy. Let's just assume, let's say Mazio is your slot guy, Dre Jacobs is your other starter. Who's that third wide receiver? And I think a lot of that is still to be determined. Let's mix in something that Beamer mixed in. Chris, I would almost say the overwhelming guy we have continued to hear more and more and more about has got to be Michael Smith at tight end. So if I'm Dal Loggins, if I'm a coordinator and I'm saying, how do I put the pieces to my offensive scheme together? And I'm saying, man, I don't really have a big receiver yet that's just taking it and kind of run with it. But I do have this 6'5" freshman, 6'6" freshman who can run and catch. I don't care if there's a TE beside his name. Let's find a way to get this guy involved. So I know that's a lot to put on a freshman, but I think you're starting to get into that conversation of, okay, is this a 3-receiver base offense, or is this a 2-receiver offense with 2 tight ends on the field? And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the 2 tight ends attached to the line of scrimmage. You can move those guys around and essentially line them up like a wide receiver if you want to.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, there's a lot to dissect from this conversation, even just with what Beamer said, because he ended up naming more guys at tight end even than he individually named at receiver. But we know there's, 8 to 10 receivers probably that we're tracking kind of in this race. But I got a chance to see Michael Smith we got 6 periods on Sunday, which is the most we've seen. It's the last chance that we'll get to see this preseason. And so we did get to see a little bit more in terms of we got to see some inside running drills. We got to see some one-on-ones. We got to see the quarterbacks throwing some routes to receivers in the end zone on air, so to speak. Mike Smith had, you've probably seen it going around Twitter. We had it in our Sights and Sounds on YouTube. He lined up against Nicky Minwari and won a one-on-one rep, and everybody was going crazy. One of the staffers I heard say that was elite. I remember, Wes, we saw this guy in high school, and he was described to us as an athletic freak, and then we saw him in 7-on-7, and you go, yeah, I can see it, because he's listed at 6'6", 255. He's got receiver-like ball skills. And so you start thinking about him in terms of matchups. That's not a guy that a lot of linebackers are going to want to cover or be able to cover, or safeties or even nickels. He's just a big guy. And we went into this year thinking, okay, they're situated pretty well at tight end. They got Josh Hyman, who's played a lot of college football and had a solid year last year, particularly at the end of the season for South Carolina. You got Brady Hunt coming in with a good bit of experience. You got some other younger guys on the roster. But Mike Smith has, I think, a lot of people buzzing, around this program. And so all indications are he's going to play a lot. And, look, you look at it, to go back to receiver, Bennett, Jacobs, those are newer guys. This is why recruiting matters, though. This is why you can use the transfer portal to your advantage. This is why landing Mazio Bennett was so big in recruiting, because those guys have come in. It doesn't matter that they're younger players. One's a true freshman. One's only played a year of college football. Doesn't matter. If they're the best guys, you go out there and play them, and receiver's typically a spot where you can get on the field earlier and make a big impact.
Yeah, Michael Smith is borderline already one of those first off the bus guys, man. Like I didn't get to make it out there yesterday, but I guess that was maybe 2 practices ago. Just watching them go through some drills, you're kind of like, who the heck? Because he wears 20. And I remember first putting my eyes on, and I'm like, who the heck is? I was like, oh, that's Mike Smith. And he's just one of those guys that grabs your eyes because he's so big, but then you watch him move, and you're like, he has very smooth, effortless movement ability. And you add that into the fact that I've told this story actually multiple times, to the fact that this is a kid who is a receiver playing tight end, but then gets offended by that idea because he wants you to know he will hit someone as well, because that's the mindset he has. And so going back to Chris's point, yes, like, you shouldn't get upset when a team loses a recruiting battle, because it happens. At the same time, it's why it's important. So go back. Michael Smith was an early commitment. South Carolina has Auburn and Tennessee going heavy at them to steal him, but they find a way to hold on to him. This is why you have to go steal a Mazio Bennett from Tennessee, and why you have to go get a Mike Smith.
We'll have more from Coach Beamer as he broke down what happened with the scrimmage on Saturday, and we'll get more of Wes and Chris's insight to practice on Sunday as well. Quick reminder, Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway is back on 1075thegame.com. Your chance to win tickets to every home football game, every home baseball game, every home men and women's basketball game for the upcoming 2024-2025 sports calendar. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win. Going to take 3 finalists like we did last year to our Summer Golf Classic at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. and crown one true winner there. It's all sponsored by our friends at the Men's Clinic at the Irmo Professional Center. More Beamer sound from Scrimmage on Saturday coming up. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
Our friends over at Krantz Cooling have been servicing residential and commercial HVAC units for folks in the Midlands since 1983. Justin Krantz, my guy, I trust him to come out to my home. Recently, we had a coil leak that we thought, and so we had them come out and do a free second opinion on it. His tech did an outstanding job, went over some options with me. One of my units, a little older, it's had some problems. They let me know some things that we need to get out in front of, need to plan. Do we need to get a new unit now? No, not quite, but probably in the future. So they let me know what that looks like. Give you peace of mind at your home to make sure that your HVAC units are going to be running in tip-top shape. They can also do it at your business, residential, commercial, KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, Cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com. Or give their team a call, 803-672-3224. That's Krantz Cooling and Heating since 1983.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you on your Monday, talking all things scrimmage from over the weekend. We've talked about so many different position battles and position groups as we try and figure out what this team's going to be. One that we haven't given a lot of attention to this offseason is what's going on at kicker. Of course, Mitch Jeter has moved on to Notre Dame, transferring out after making 23 of 25 field goals over the last 2 seasons at South Carolina. So now you had Alex Herrera as a sixth-year senior and William Joyce, who believes a redshirt junior, competing for the kicking job as of right now. Now, both these guys, despite having been on the team for a couple years, have not done any significant kicking up to this point because, of course, Mitch Jeter's had the job these past couple of years. And Coach Beamer, who, of course, big special teams guy, that's in his nature, that's his coaching history, was very blunt when talking about the kicking competition. Cut number 15 here, Ed. This is how he assessed how it's going so far.
I think it's been very inconsistent. I think all those guys have had opportunities in practice that they've taken advantage of, and then they've also missed some really good opportunities to take a step forward. So it's I don't think we're any closer to having a starter at that position. I'm not worried, but it just overall has not been consistent as much as I would like. Having said, Kai Kroger and Mason Love are punting the crap out of the ball right now, so I'm really excited about those two guys and the way they're hitting it. And our kickers will be fine. They just we've got to keep putting them in pressure situations. And one thing that we've done this year preseason different is just putting them in pressure situations where something's on the line for the whole team, good or bad, depending on their kick, and trying to create those, if not daily, pretty much daily.
And I've been saying this all morning. Coach Beamer naturally skews positive on a lot of things when it comes to what's going on with the team. And, you know, even if things may not be going great, it's like, hey, these guys competing, doing this, doing that. When he's just saying it's inconsistent, that was more blunt than we're used to hearing him. So that kind of raises a little bit of a concern for what's going on with this kicking battle right now.
Yeah, it puts your antenna up a little bit. I agree. I also wonder, you know, how often do y'all take what coaches say at face value versus, like, is there any chance we're getting the opposite of coach speak here, in that Beamer he wants to dial up the pressure on these kickers every way possible? Like, is there a little bit of Pete Limbo, like letting the kicker battle go all the way to game day a few years ago, when Mitch Jeter ultimately took over and then didn't miss a single kick? Like, you know, if you were following that one. Now Limbo, if I remember correctly, he was pretty, I would say, positive about both those guys doing well in camp. And I believe even statistically had the receipts and, like, compared it to what Parker White was kicking in terms of percentage in practice, you know, the prior year. And it was like a little bit below that clip, sort of. And so, you know, I think this is something to go ahead and put on your radar. It's already kind of been on our radar, I think, Chris, in that, all right, you can't just assume you're going to go out there and make all your 37-yard field goals. Like, that's something. The beauty of football, in my opinion, is there are so many little details that either, if you have an advantage, can help you win a close game, or that if you don't have an advantage, you can lose a close game. That's an area where South Carolina, I mean, when Mitch Jeter would run out there for a field goal at a makeable standard distance, it was borderline automatic. And that is a luxury most colleges do not have. So I think if you're Beamer, if you're Joe D, if you're the staff, there is a benefit in trying to ramp up the pressure on all these guys and say, look, of course it's not decided. Like, you've got to go win this job, because you want, if there is a kick with a game on the line, you want for them to already have felt as much pressure as they possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, since you asked, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit different than the one that was actually, interestingly, Alex Herrera, who's, you know, maybe the front runner this year, and Mitch Jeter back in 2022, the one that you referenced, Wes, that Jeter ultimately won. I went back and looked up some stuff in terms of what was said on this. And I do feel like it was a little bit different. Is there some motivation there? Sure. I mean, I wouldn't expect Beamer to come out and say both those guys have been nearly perfect so far, blah, blah, blah. But it's a little bit different back then. First of all, the stats, I'm not even going to go back to the Elliott Fry era, but just to see the past 3 seasons of what South Carolina has had. Parker White in 2021 was 13 of 14 on field goals. He only missed one, which was in the 30 to 39-yard range. He missed one against Vanderbilt, actually, in that 1-point win. If you go back and look at Mitch Jeter, that one's easy. He didn't miss a single kick and was 2 for 2 from 50-plus. Last season, he slipped to only miss 2 field goals. He was 12 of 14. Both of those misses were from 50-plus. So like you said, Wes, aside from one random miss from Parker White, the past 3 seasons, they have been automatic. It's not just their own, but they have been automatic aside from one miss from Parker. Pete Limbo pointed out during the battle between Mitch Jeter and Alex Herrera in 2022 that Parker White during practice charting was like 90% on kicks, and Herrera and Jeter at that time were charting at 80 to 85%. Jeter ends up winning the job, and he ends up being 100 in games. So I don't know what they're charting, but I think it's a mix of both. Is there some motivation? Do they want to keep the battle tight? Yes. But are they not also, at the same time, are they not quite happy with where those guys are? I think that's fair to say, too.
And I do wonder, or to me, going back to that, Herrera has at least proved to you that he is capable because he did it back then. So can he – now, is it a little bit different this year? Because this year, I mean, at least outside looking in, he goes in as the favorite. Like, this is the guy that he was probably going to transfer out himself potentially, and Jeter leaves, so he sticks around, goes on scholarship, and it's kind of like you've waited your turn. Is there a little bit of added pressure with the fact that, all right, I've waited my entire college career for this chance, and now it's here? You can put pressure on yourself to want to perform,
right?
Because this is everything you've waited for.
Yeah.
So I do think, but there's nothing quite like the pressure of lining up in front of your entire team at the end of a practice, and whether or not they have to run gassers or not is on you. And they're all looking directly at you.
Preston also threw out there, if you make this kick, defense gets to eat first. It's a lot of pressure as well. So a lot of things you can throw out there to put pressure on, but nothing's going to, obviously match what it's going to be like maybe go on the road in week number 2 and having to kick a game-winning field goal against Kentucky or something like that. So it's one thing to win the job in camp. It's another thing to be able to step up and perform when the game situations do arise. And again, until we actually see them out there prove it on the field, that's going to be a question mark with this team.
Yeah, the other interesting footnote in that history that Chris presented there would be Parker White's first year as the kicker. He did not win the job out of camp. So then he took over and got better and better as his career went on. It was one of the best kickers in school history, and also got better and better when they started making better decisions on when to run him out there and not running him out there for 55-yard field goals as a first-year kicker.
Wasn't that a Muschamp's favorite thing, long field goals?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was just clear. Parker was like automatic and inside of a certain range. It wasn't that he didn't have the leg. It's just that's a long way to maintain your accuracy as a first-year kicker. And it felt like 52-yard field goal, 52-yard. And I'm like, guys, just go for it.
Maybe think about going for it.
Yes.
You're 2-6.
Just go for it.
Well, that's going to be one of many important battles to watch as camp goes along. Again, 19 days away from kickoff. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Preston had a bit of an interesting rant this morning about how soft these football players are these days. We'll hit that coming up next.
What an old man yelling at clouds.
Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Hey, Ed, I just...
All right, guys. You know it. I've been telling you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. My buddies Joe and Mac. They're going to take care of you and your roof. 803-590-7870, classicroofingsc.com. More information on their services, and you can get a free estimate by going to that website. Lots of storms in the area, and if your roof has been affected by one of these storms, some people may blindly tell you, hey, just file a claim, let the insurance take care of it. Long term, maybe not your best course of action. Why not know for sure? Let them come out. They're going to get on your roof. They're going to get this high-tech drone up there as well, and they're going to check out every little detail and let you know exactly what you need to do moving forward. Also, for peace of mind long-term, they're going to let you know kind of how much life you may have on your roof as well, so you can go ahead and make financial plans for what could be a big purchase down the road. Call them today. Call them right now, 803-590-7870, or head to classicroofingsc.com for more.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, West Metro, Chris Clark, along with you for a few more minutes here. This morning on the early game, I was filling in for Bill, And Preston and I got to talking about these shipping container cooling stations that they have out at practice, at least for the early part of fall camp. And Preston had an interesting thought, given the fact that, you know, in his generation of playing college football, they didn't have these things.
Actually, it's one of my favorite things, and I still miss. There was a stretch where we had Preston on with us.
I remember,
and just inserting a little bit to send Preston's mind back to two-a-days back in the day, and then just waiting to see what he would say was one of my favorite things. So I would be bringing up stuff every day if I was Bill to send him back in time, because it's you always get a fun reaction.
This is about a 2-minute clip of Preston going old man yells at cloud on these soft football players these days.
We used to be a proper country, I believe they would say on the internet. A lot of things happen here. What he was referring to were cooling containers in which the players can go into these cooling containers and get cooled off from the oppressive heat that they are experiencing every day, and before they go for a break and have
some
snacks.
water and snacks. And Lou didn't have that for y'all.
Again, man,
or the orange slices.
No, your cooling station was, you got lucky if a cloud went in front of the sun.
That's actually pretty accurate. All right, man. Listen, I know we have to take precautions. I do think it might be hotter now than it was when I played. I'll give them that. I will give them that. However, there are some things that I won't stand for. Breaks. You are forced to take a mandatory break. I don't know if that was a thing. Snacks. I could just imagine just going to the table. They probably have some Uncrustables there.
Sure.
You know, a little bit of Snickers bar.
Orange slices.
Slices. Everybody gets a nice little snack at the break.
Little juice box.
A juice box.
Some mixed nuts for some protein.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, I'm sure this is trail mix.
I'm sure it's all great stuff because they have a nutritionist also that we didn't have back then. But what's really funny to me is because it just happens over time. Because when I played, way back in the time when I played, there were always players that played before us that were just saying, you guys are so soft.
Yeah.
You don't know how good you got it. You got ice in your water?
Yeah.
I can't believe you have ice in your water.
You didn't have to ram your head into a brick wall for 20 minutes every day before practice. We did.
And some of the times when I go to tell myself these football stories, it does sound like sometimes I played in caveman times because Shane is not wrong by doing these things. It's just that it's just so far removed from what I did.
So that's Preston's perspective on how much the game's changed in just 20 short years.
I do love his perspective also, though, that the people before him had it so hard as well.
Of course.
Like, I feel like this isn't anything, not just football, but it's a story as old as time that everyone before you, well, back in my day, and when you're the young person in that story, you tell yourself, I'll never be like that. And then 20 years later, here you are complaining about fudge rounds after practice or something.
Yeah,
so, but yeah, I do sometimes wonder what would have happened. All the resources football has now, what would have happened if South Carolina could have just been first and been like, hey, we're going to, like 30 years ago, hey, we're going to have a nutritionist. We're going to put in all these extra resources for players. And because now you almost have to have it just to stay on course, like on track with everyone else, because everybody has it.
It's the minimum now.
Yeah, it's expected. But the cooler containers have actually been out there several years.
Yeah, I think Beamer
They're
said
not
since
new.
his first year, at least that he knew of.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, man, it is hot out there. And I do think it is fun to talk about, but especially if guys get close to getting overheated, I think and it's not like we've never been out there and there have been guys just chilling. It's not like you can be in a drill. You can't be in a drill and be like, hey, coach, while I'm waiting on my rep, I'm going to go sit in the freezer.
Well, you got that thing, and then you got the benches that are also cooled, and there was one guy on them, and I almost made it too. walking by the thing.
But if you're out there and you're a big dude and you're close to actually like legitimately getting overheated,
you're not.
I think it's very, very smart to have that, because I know we're having fun with it, but stuff can happen on a football field where that would be actually necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're getting, like you said, sitting in between. It's not for comfort. Like, it's out of necessity.
Yeah.
Really, it's almost like saying, back in my day, we didn't, and I loved Preston's rant, but, it's not like, back in my day, we didn't wear helmets or whatever, like, safety is a good
Did they have leather helmets when Preston played?
He did say what they would do is they would dip towels in water and I forget what the name of the solution is, because if you were on the verge of passing out, it would like wake you back up like a smelling salt. Ammonia. Yeah. Ooh. So he said they would dunk towels in water and put that on there to get you back in the right frame of mind for the rest of practice.
I prefer the cooling station.
I don't think that's an FDA approved way to do it.
I don't think it is either, but the statute of limitations is passed, so I think we're okay. Lou Holtz is in the clear for that one. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show, Terry Ford coming up next here on The Game.